I finally found what I was looking for, a perfect example for what I talk about a lot of the time, that really length of something, it plays a very important role in how good something is, and that it can be very important to nail it perfectly. And I finally have a great example of a lot of things I'm going to talk about. Before I continue, though, I would like to say, go read Necromancer. Necromancer is great. I highly recommend it. No spoilers ahead if you want to hear more of my thoughts on it, but it's great. Go read it. 20 chapters long. It's amazing. 8 out of 10 on my anime list. It's just, it's great. But I probably have to set a few things up to continue the discussion on Necromancer. I am in the frame of mind and in the camp of length of the series is very important to it. Not just into how long it is and how long you have to connect with characters, but also in the delivery of the plot. When making a series, you should only make it as long as it needs to be and no longer. I don't feel that making a series that's super long that doesn't do anything with its length is a very good way to go about it. Necromancer, as an example, has only a couple core characters. And when I say only a couple core characters, I mean literally just 2 main characters, and the rest are side or supporting cast. And they end up making it far more compelling and far better of an experience because of it. To use more game terms, because I think more people are more familiar with how games work. In games, there's the school of thought, and really any art, there's a school of thought of making something that has a couple core concepts, that the couple core concepts of what makes that game or what makes that piece of art unique, make that great, make that amazing, sharpen that to a fine edge, and cut everything you don't need out. Just make an experience that is great at what it does, and nothing else. Not making, oh yeah, let's have this generic harem relationship thrown in here, and have some ecchi, and have a couple kind of humorous pieces of dialogue, and then have a cool story we talk about every once in a long while. Focusing on the good parts, focusing on only good parts, and making that as good as it possibly can be, instead of having a giant cast where everyone has a couple lines of dialogue and no one really gets to do anything or be fleshed out at all. Have a couple characters that are really incredibly fleshed out and really well developed and are great characters on their own. Necromancer does this really well, and again, is one of many examples of what I talk about when what I'm looking for in a great series. It accomplishes all of this in 20 chapters. It is a semi-episodic, semi-story-based series. It has a point. It knows what it's going to say, and it says it in as little time as possible. And that is why it works. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It doesn't continue to do things. There are things in the series that are kind of iconic to me in some ways, that are only done a couple of times, and it's really effective because those couple of times take up a huge majority of the series. And again, I feel like I'm getting kind of off topic, I'm kind of going all around the place, but really what I'm trying to say here is, take 2 series. One you gave an 8 out of 10 to, another you gave an 8 out of 10 to, but one is 100 episodes long and another is 10 episodes long. Which is easier to recommend? Of course, it's circumstances and all that, but which are you more likely to rewatch? Which are you more happy about seeing? Which had bigger of an impact? Probably the 100 episode long one, but the way I grade anime and manga on more of a scale of enjoyment, a scale of how good it is, rather than how long it is compared to how good it is compared to other things. It's more so 1 plus 1 rather than timesing and dividing is how I scale it. So if I have a series that's an 8 out of 10, and it's 100 episodes long, and another series that's 8 out of 10, that's 10 episodes long, I think those series are about equal to each other. Now, if a series were to be as good as the 8 out of 10 one, the 100 episode 8 out of 10 one, but if that had only been 10 episodes, I would probably have ranked it much higher because of the fact it crammed 100 episodes worth of content into 10 episodes, and thusly would make it far more worth the time commitment that it is. Necromancer does this. It's an 8 out of 10 series, and it's only 20 chapters long. It's only 20 chapters. That's not a lot. That's basically 10 anime episodes. If it was 10 anime episodes, they would have to pad it out a little bit, basically. And that is one of the reasons why it works so well. It does not overstay its welcome at all, and that's one thing I was worried about, that will this get old? Will this couple core concepts last for 20 chapters, rather? And it does. It does it well because of the fact it has a narrative. And it does one thing that I've been advocating for creators to do for so long, which is, if you have characters that last throughout the entirety of a series, or just last for a long time throughout the series, give them more character development as it goes along. So when people look back to the earlier parts of the series, they think about this well-developed, well-characterized character rather than the character they were initially reading about, making a series feel twice as large as it is because you have two impressions of it. You have the initial impression of, oh, I wonder what's up with this character. I wonder what's going on. I wonder what this mystery is. And then you have the next impressions, which is, oh, I know what this character, oh, he was doing that. And oh, I see what was happening here. And you think about it from the mystery standpoint and also the standpoint of what actually is going on and the characters you've come to enjoy and like. It gives more meaning, gives more depth, it gives more layers to what you're actually talking about and what you're actually doing. And it also helps a lot if the characters are thought-provoking. If characters can say something that make you stop and think about it for a second, that's even better. The longer you can keep someone in a series, the better. That's the better a series is. If I watch two series and I like them about equally when I watch them, if one keeps me thinking, keeps me coming back, and keeps me really thinking about what its themes were and what it was talking about for like years to come, and the other I haven't thought about since, then there's going to be a clear difference between the two. And that's something that a lot of creators should strive for, not just because of the fact that it keeps people, oh yeah, I played 100,000 hours in this video game and 10 hours in this one's obviously better, but also because of the fact it's just more food for thought. It's more into it. It had more layers. It just had more to it. It is a better product, and that is why it took that much more time. Not just because it took more time, but because it was a better product for it. And so people kind of try to do that, but in the wrong ways. People try to, if my manga is 400 chapters long and people read it, then everyone's gonna love it because, oh yeah, I spent 400 chapters reading this. It has to be good. And eventually, I'm gonna get something out of it. I mean, they spend more time with the characters, the more they're gonna be related to them, the more they're gonna be attached to them, and the better the story is gonna feel. And that works. That definitely 100% works. Series are better the longer they are. No matter, well, let's not say no matter, but generally they're better the longer they go. But if it's just useless fluff, then what was the point? I mean, the person who made Necromancer, the mangaka who made it, could have made a different series. A different mangaka could have made 20 chapters of their manga, in the same time it took them to make Necromancer. And that's kind of a difference. Think of 20 chapters of One Piece compared to an entire series that I praise so highly. And it's a large difference. The amount of time it takes to make a 10 out of 10 great masterpiece, whatever, in comparison to the amount of time it takes to make... I suppose what I'm saying here is that another school of thought that I have, and this is a lot explaining the setup, actually talking about the series itself, but another school of thought is that instead of spending a year to make one 10 out of 10 masterpiece, spending 10 months to make a 10 out of 10 masterpiece, spending 10 months making 10 different 9 out of 10 masterpieces and having one of those, having some of them be 8s, having some of them be 10s. Because really, that has to do with another school of thought, which is, if you're at a certain skill level, you're going to make things one down, one above, and at that skill level. So if you say, consistently are making 7 out of 10s on average, then you're also going to have a few 8s, and you're going to have a few 6s. That's how it's going to work. So if you can consistently make 9 out of 10s, every once in a while, some of those are going to be 10s, and some of them are going to be 8s. And that's okay. But the fact that you can get 9 9s and 1 10 is far better than just making 1 10. And that's kind of another school of thought I go down. This person, instead of making one manga that is 100 chapters long, they could easily make 5 different series as good as Necromancer, if not a bit better or a bit worse. They could make a 7 out of 10 series, a 9 out of 10 series, and then a bunch of other Necromancers. And that is just so awesome sounding to me. That's just so great. If the manga can do that, that's incredible. That would just be 10 10. They've only really had one other larger work, and I'm interested in reading it, but I haven't read it yet, and we'll see. We'll see how good that is. But right now, high impressions. This is exactly what I'm looking for. Making something with a few core details, having them be really good, having it be not a lot of fluff, no added filler, no just things that aren't important, just core concepts, telling a great story, not overstaying its welcome, doing it in a short amount of efficient time, getting a lot of ideas in there, and fully characterizing each of the characters, so when you look back, you see the character as you read it, but also you see the fully developed and fully realized character. And I guess that's enough setup to actually talk about the series now. Yay! Well, like I was saying, it does all those things really well. It does a lot in a short amount of time, and that's one of the reasons I like it. And again, the main character of the series is a smart person. And they're not necessarily good or bad. They're very much on a gray spectrum, and there's a lot of mysteries set up with them that are answered, and that's great, because there's a scene where he goes to a chocolate store to order some chocolate, and you're like, oh, this evil necromancer dude's buying some chocolate, that's cool. But also you have to think, why does he go there? Why does he buy the chocolate? And that's answered, and it makes me think a lot, because that when it's answered, it's like, yeah, that's an impactful thing. The fact that he goes to that chocolate store means a lot, and because of that, it gives that much more weight to the earlier chapters. But, beyond that, it also, because it's episodic nature, it tells a lot of different stories with a lot of different, well-defined characters that are honestly really good. Some stronger than others, of course, and one of them that is my personal favorite, no bias here at all, no bias at all, there's a writer character in it. And, again, no biased or anything. I don't like him because she's a writer or anything, nah. But there's a novelist, and he does something that I find incredibly relatable to writers. Even if you don't write for this reason, a lot of writers end up finding that they do write with this reason in mind. And yeah, I'm not going to spoil what it is, but he does something incredibly relatable at the end of his character arc, and it's just a really well-defined, great character. He starts off being likable, being this guy who has a lot of layers, a lot of interesting characteristics. Like, he has a thing about his face, and he has a thing about what he does, and he's very layered. I could talk about him for quite a while and all the stuff he does and the way he writes and his frame of mind while writing. But also, after that, he gets so much character development. He completely changes how he writes in a matter of a couple pages of character development. It's well thought, it's well characterized, it's a huge amount of character development. And it's really kind of impactful. You see this well-defined character develop to be even more well-defined, even more grounded in the world, and have all his character development and be such a stronger character for it. And then beyond that, you see him in just another couple pages go through another full cycle of character development. And it's great. Instead of necessarily having a character and like, oh yes, over these 100 chapters, you've got really close and related to them, and you really feel this character, and when they go through character development, you feel a lot. But instead, it introduces them, has them feel relatable right off the bat, has them well defined and established right off the bat, and in a matter of a chapter or two, it fully realizes 3 different character development cycles. The initial introduction cycle, the first character development cycle on his changing the way he writes, and then his third character development cycle, which is changing the reason why he writes. And it's so interesting, so fascinating, and there's so much to be dug, and that's just 2 chapters, and that's just a side character of those 2 chapters. And it goes the same with a lot of the characters. There's some characters that are much more one-dimensional or one-note, but are still interesting nevertheless. But there are a few things. It's not perfect by any definition. It needs about 4 to 5 more chapters. Not chapters. It needs about 4 to 5 more pages to fully realize what it's doing. Like, a lot of the time, I feel like the tone isn't quite set. There's 2 scenes in particular I think about. In the very start, it needs about 1 more page to set up the tone and really grasp what the tone is and what's going on before it went straight into the story. You need about a whole page of just setting the tone and just really easing into the story, and it didn't quite have that. And there's another scene where I'm unsure if I should be feeling dread or love or both. And if it had another page to really set the tone and set what was going on, that would be great. So 4 or 5 more pages more than it actually was to set the tone and really make it more of a tone piece would have been great. That would have been really, probably would have pushed it over the edge. Right now, it's just an absolutely solid 8. It's an unbelievably solid 8. Probably will be an 8 for a really long time. I don't know. A lot of series moved down. Like, one of my top 16 series from when I first started watching anime is now in my top 50 and is now like a 5 out of 10 or something. And it's just, it's weird, but it's gonna stay a 8 out of 10 for a long time because it's just so solid. But maybe having those extra 4 to 5 pages, but also one other thing, which is more so feels like an experience thing, more so that the writer didn't have quite as much experience because this is their first manga, I'm pretty sure, well, their first full-length manga. They had a couple other like doujinshis and other smaller things they've worked on, but this is the first, big-time one. And I feel like there's a little bit disconnect of experience because little spoilers, but not really. Jack the Ripper shows up and I got really excited because, over here, Jack the Ripper is, he's famous. Like, there's a baseball team named after him. Like, Jack the Ripper fought Batman. the Batman, Jack the Ripper fought. And, like, he's really a hyped up character. He's the untouchable. He's the ultimate mass murderer, you know. In that time period, he was the best of the best. He was the super murderer. When really he's probably just some pervert that was killing people. But Jack the Ripper is kind of like, you know, he's a big deal. And the main character of the series, thus far, has been portrayed as this kind of evil, kind of just will do anything for his shop, and really smart character. He was portrayed as really smart. And I was really hoping that it'd go full on Lelouch v. Britannia, L versus Light Yagami, and just have this epic mind duel where he tries to track down Jack the Ripper, and then he traps him into an enclosure and then fights him and beats him. And I was really hoping for that. I was really hoping for this with, like, mind games between the Jack the Ripper and the Necromancer. And we didn't really get that. Jack the Ripper was more so of a one note, oh, look at me, I'm a pedophile, wah wah wah, wah wah wah, protagonist. He was that type of character. And that was disappointing. I feel like if it had those 4 to 5 extra pages of setting the tone, and also they had this epic duel between Jack the Ripper and the Necromancer, and as this mental ultimate enclosure, and Necromancer's powers were kind of showed off a bit more, because a lot of his powers are more saved for the end, where I feel like they could have been foreshadowed and kind of shown off a little bit towards the beginning of the series as well, especially in a fight against the Jack the Ripper, whereas Jack the Ripper was really just a common street thug rather than, you know, this iconic legendary person from history that's been blown way out of proportion. Again, though, main character, fantastic. I absolutely love the main character. The secondary character, the main female lead, is strong. I appreciate her character. I feel like she could have been developed a little bit more time spent on her. Again, 1 or 2 more pages could have made a huge difference in the tone setting and the development of her character. But again, small gripes, some large gripes, some small gripes, and generally they're a really strong pair. And I do really like the comedy between the two. The comedy in the Necromancer is surprisingly really strong. And I don't know why I'm surprised by that, because everything else in the series is really strong, so why wouldn't the comedy be strong? And all in all, the series it gives you the impression of a huge lived-in world with so much more going on in it than you get to see. It has themes in it that keep you thinking, themes about the church and what they do, and thinking about, like, yes, of course, there's Salem witch trials and, like, the Crusades and all that, and things that can really put a lot into the series. And I actually started to tear up towards the end. I think that's because I was reading like 4 or 5 or 6 sad manga in a row, and I was kind of like thinking about some sad stuff at the time why I teared up, but still I kind of teared up towards the very ending with his crow friend. His crow friend was saying some like pretty touching stuff, and I was like, yeah, crow guy, yeah, that's pretty good. I love you, crow guy. And that's, you know, that's how that went. And anything that can make me tear up a little bit, honestly, is probably pretty good. I think there's only a handful of series that have managed that. Most of them are in my top 10 list. Some of them not so much. And yeah. It's all around just a great series, and it has a lot going for it. It's really solid, and it's only 20 chapters. I can recommend this to everyone. It's an 8 out of 10 that's 20 chapters long. I can recommend this to literally every single person I ever meet, because it's just that strong. It's that good. And if it wasn't 20 chapters, if it was 100 chapters, I wouldn't be able to do that. I would say, yes, everyone check this out. I would say, I guess if you're interested in this plot or the story or anything in particular, you could check it out, I guess. Because of its length, because it's so easy to recommend, because it has so many different layers, and because I can view it through multiple different lenses, and I can view it from the mystery standpoint, from the protagonist standpoint, from the whole picture standpoint, there's a lot of different ways to go about it, and there's a lot of different people to look at, and there's a lot of different thoughts in it. There's a lot of different things. And before I say this, I've got to preface it with, when I go into a series and I see the main idea of the series and the series is over and I say, wow, that was a great main idea, I really want to take that and write something about it, that's not good. That means someone didn't execute the main idea well. If I get them out of the series and I say, that was a great main idea, that was just awesome, but this side idea over here, I really want to write something with a side idea that was touched upon lightly. And that's what I came out of this series with. There's another female character in this that I want to write something about. That I have a feeling like, oh yes, this is a cool character. I want to do something with this. There's a lot more going on here, and I could write a lot about this character. And that's a great feeling, because they're just a lightly touched upon character that's kind of in the background a lot. And the fact that I want to take this character and I want to do a lot of cool stuff with it, and they're just a background character that's touched upon, means a lot, because the main idea is executed so well, I don't have anything to add to it, but yet their side ideas that are touched upon have so much more depth and meaning to them that I feel like I could bring a lot more and make an entire series out of. And that, I suppose, is a huge striking mark between a good series, a great series, or whatever. I don't actually know what that dividing point would be. How would that be? A well-executed series, a non-well-executed series? I don't know what that means, but it's a good feeling. It's a really good feeling to have that. And even from like a consumer standpoint, where you say, I was fully content with what that happened, but I really wanted to see more of this. I really wish there was more of this in this series. And that is also a good feeling. The main thing was well done. Like, I feel fully content with what happened there. But this side thing over here, I could watch a whole series on that. That is a huge accomplishment to get, and this Necromancer pulls that off really well. And that's really most of what I have to say on Necromancer, which is a shame because, again, it's such a solid and great series. It's just there's not much more to say. I could say the first chapter is a little hard to get into, so it's, again, a bit of tone problems and a bit of pacing problems. It need to be a little bit longer, a little bit more tone set at the beginning. But so if you're feeling a little bit like, I'm unsure, I think this is cool, but like I'm unsure about the first chapter's like quality, it does get far better after that. Just it's a little shaky at the very, very start, and that can be a little off-putting, I suppose. But besides that, just absolutely all-around great series. Good job to the mangaka who did this, and I look forward to their other works, and I will probably make a video on their other manga, especially since the art style in it is really, really striking looking. They use grays and whites and have splashes of color, and that's different and unique and cool, and I probably want to talk about that. But there's a lot of stuff I want to talk about, so I guess I'll see you all in the next video. Bye, everybody.